If you're more established and you've got an established market, it's how you psychologically preparing someone for what BD is really going to be. And look, BD is tough, right? And you get a lot of no's and stuff like that. But you can still psychologically prepare people for what that is.
Yep.
Honesty being one thing. The other big thing for me so when I speak to a lot of owners and like just give a bit of advice and things like that, there's a lack of clarity from them on really what they want to do. So I've spoken to about 3 people in about the last month. We've all said, right, I want to set up contract, I want to start contract. So I'm going to hire someone to come in and do contract. Do you know contract yourself? No. So you're not offering anything. You're expecting someone to come in and do this, but you don't really have a proper, any sort of clarity on what your expectations are.
Real quick before we begin. Working with over 1,000 recruiters, I've seen the same thing time and time again. The challenge of always being on a roller coaster of results and just wanting a consistent way to win new, exclusive and retained business. To help figure out how you can get there, I've created a business development assessment, a way to test your strategy. It's a simple process with a few questions designed to give you actionable steps that you need to win consistent business for your agency. Whether you're a leader or a top biller, hundreds of recruiters have already used this assessment to jumpstart their growth, including million-dollar billers. And as a valued listener to the show, I've included a link so you can access it for free right now in the show notes. I'd love to hear your thoughts, so please go check it out. And now let's get on with the show.
Hello, this week I'm joined on the Recruiting Better podcast by 3 experts from the recruitment industry. They're all recruitment business founders and owners and directors, and they are going to share with us their thoughts and feedback on the State of BD 2025 that I commissioned for my business Resonant. The report covers data from over 500 recruitment businesses, covering 35 questions all about their business development strategy. You can get the report from the link in the show notes. Today I'm joined by Chris Ryan, the COO of BGC, a construction business who's breaking out of blue collar into white collar permanent recruitment. I'm also joined by Roheel Ahmad, co-founder of Forsyth Barnes, and now the founder of Imagine AI, and Ben Cawthorne, director of SW6, a prominent rec-to-rec in the professional services space. I really hope you enjoy this episode. We get into lots of different insights to share with you. I'm looking forward to getting your comments and feedback on how we get on. So welcome back to another episode of the Recruiting Better podcast with me, Ben Browning, and today I'm joined by an expert panel to talk about data in our State of BD 2025 report. Chris, I'd like to share this stat with you. We've been talking about this offline, but one of the things that came from the report is that 76% of recruiters have no clear plan for BD. I find that absolutely fascinating. I know that we all do, but I know that's informed some of the decisions that you've been making in your business recently. So I'd love it if you could share a little bit about that.
Yeah. So we mainly do trade and labour as a business. And 80% of our sales come from 20% of our people.
Right.
100%. That's how we operate as a business. As we've scaled into a more technical environment, that hasn't worked. So our whole account expansion piece hasn't worked. So what we've done is talking to people like you, working with sales playbook, looking at account expansion into technical, and really expanding our tech stack to help those recruiters drive it forward. So it's a bit of a change for us. So we've been really successful in trades and labour, 100 million plus. Really easy to do for us. It's all about relationships.
Yeah, right.
Real, being personal, upfront, talking to people face to face. As we moved into a market which is driven by TA, driven by tech, it's been very difficult for us to scale. So that's why we're investing at the minute.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I think one of the really interesting things about the business and getting to know the business, Chris, is obviously you've got a really strong legacy in the markets that you've served, in that blue collar space in particular, and then shifting to the white collar piece and the permanent recruitment as well has really seen you kind of adopt a more strategic kind of mindset around selling and sales.
Yeah, well, we haven't acted as a recruitment business.
Mm-hmm.
No, we've gone out, we've targeted frameworks, we've built long-term relationships, and effectively our recruiters have been account managers.
Right.
So they will fill roles. You know, some of the recruiters are billing 2 million plus, but it's all product account management. There's no BD in there. So when we pick and shift that to another market, that doesn't work. So yeah, strategically, we're investing in training, investing in tech, and investing in new BD approaches to really drive things forward. So yeah.
I think as well, like if you look at like really established businesses and almost like the machine recruitment businesses, they all know their strategy, they all know their playbook. But there's a lot of businesses, and the landscape's really quite diverse across recruitment because it's quite easy to set up, right? Set up is normally top biller goes in, makes a business, knows how to win accounts, nurture accounts, and make money. But maybe that training and development from that person can't scale. People don't understand. It's almost like Wayne Rooney's not a great coach because he doesn't understand that or why people can't do the same thing as them. I think that's a lot across the industry. I think building a framework and managing and KPIing and making sure that framework is stuck to is actually half the battle, and not done very well in our industry at all.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that feeds into what you're doing with Imagine AI, Roheel, as well, and helping consultants. But you also went through that journey with Forsyth Barnes, I guess.
Yeah, look, I think for me, the big thing is where it first starts is the cultural element of things. So similar to what you're just saying there, take 21 and 22, for instance. A lot of businesses were getting by on account management and reaping those clients and so on as well, right? So it became easy to do so. So you then start to lack a skill. You get quite flabby around a particular skill and so on as well. Even the managers end up like almost forgetting how to hit the sharp end of doing it.
Yeah.
So then you come back into this type of market, culture's shifted a little bit, and it's hard to get that back. You have to get that back. And that was one of the things that I'd say with my old business FB. We had a culture of BD every single day. Doesn't matter how many jobs you had on, doesn't matter what you're doing, you had to BD every day. Now, for me personally, I know there are differences, but I still look at BD into existing accounts and so on as well. Yeah. Because if you're opening new doors into new departments, that's still business development. You weren't getting anything from there before.
Yeah, for sure.
You have to do that every single day, like without fail, Reeve. I think that's what really saw us through 23 and 24 and 2020, because we grew through those years.
Yeah.
But I know it was difficult for a lot of others. Yeah. So weirdly, I kind of like it. It's a tough market, selfishly. I don't like it for everyone else, but yeah.
If you know how to do it in a tough market, it's as if you be the sun just.
We continue growing, like headcount, financials, and everything else. So it's almost like keep this up, but selfish.
Like sales culture is absolutely key, right? But also like think about the shift in the landscape after COVID. People wanting more flexibility, people wanting to work from home. I think these are amazing things, by the way. I'm not saying that everybody should just be back and marching into offices, right? Do what works for you. But like generating a sales culture when you've got people working in their bedroom, I think it's tough. Yeah, really tough.
Yeah, right. Yeah, completely. I remember right at the start of COVID, we had obviously all the consultants at Ben Group where I was at the time were sent home. One of my first training sessions in that first lockdown period, a guy was like working literally off his bedroom floor with his laptop propped up on a cardboard box. I'm like, we've come a little bit away from that now. Yeah. There's still this real, I think you're absolutely right. How can you live and work in that one room environment? It's different. I think it's different for us as well, right? We in our family homes, whatever, like it's a very different setup.
Juniors as well. Like think about being a junior, and I mean like sub 2 years, working from home and wanting that freedom, but actually like carving your early career out and getting your sales culture right and getting your processes right and understanding how challenging markets can be. That's when you really want to be in the office all the time to like nail it, so that when you almost earn that time to have more flexibility and freedom, you know how to deliver.
It's for me, the biggest thing. If I look back to when I first started, I picked up so much just learning through osmosis, through hiring other top performers, but also seeing how they'd operate on a daily basis and thinking, shit, if I back myself to kind of get to that level, but I have to operate at that level as well.
Yes.
And it's the little things that you don't see when you work from home on how they operate, the tonality, the speed at which they operate. We are talking at a time where it was physical handsets and it was just watching them put a phone call down, get their stuff done as quick as possible, and then straight back up. And it was relentless, up and down, up and down, up and down. Seeing that, it's like, well, either if I'm going to rise to that, or I'm just going to be average. Even the journey in, we were in the West End, and I love my cars. So seeing some of the cars parked with Arab number plates and everything knocking around Mayfair, I kind of want that, but I've got to work for that as well. So I agree. I think juniors are definitely.
I think I sometimes come like I think I sometimes miss this slightly as well, because I think about sales consulting, I think about the world of sales culture and how you employ that. And one of the interesting stats from the report was that only 33% of consultants get to listen back to their calls on a regular basis, or get to listen back to their calls at all, which to me is completely crazy. And I think, well, that's a great way to help build culture. Is if you're working from home, you need to be listening to call examples, not just of your own, but of your colleagues, and good examples and bad examples, and create that library internally of quality resourced. But that doesn't actually cover all of the osmosis bit. Like, it's not the things that you pick up from being in that environment aren't just hearing other people's conversations. It's, as you say, that attitude, that approach, that style.
It's probably a drawback of recruitment owners as well in terms of like delivering training osmosis, because they almost like plonk you on a desk most of the time, sitting next to like the two top billers, and expect you to like just sponge all the information without any process. And I understand why that stat, and I believe that stat is completely accurate. I think everything that we've just discussed there, completely crystal clear, says that the actual putting a really robust process in and training and developing on that process is going to accelerate your results.
What's really interesting as well is that from data, 84% of consultants say that they have positive beliefs about sales, and 85% of consultants say they have positive beliefs about their value as a recruiter, which I think is really positive. I think that's really good to hear. And I think it'll get better. Yeah, you might say that, you know, the fact that 16 and 15% don't is concerning, but then when we looked at it again, we found that only 50% of consultants like the way that they're encouraged to approach BD. They only like the way they sell. Do we put that down to a tough market, or do we put that down to, is there something else that's maybe colouring the way that recruiters feel about them?
Maybe actually their market could be. So their entry point, are they in the right seat? Are they speaking to the right people? Are they like, I think there's a common, not misconception, but like I think we think as recruiters, you can almost make money in every market, and the end result is making money, right? Which, you know, for career longevity now, and especially the new generation of people coming through and into the world of work, like I think you've got to be much more considerate around what markets they're going into, the culture of a business, who they're speaking to set them up for long-term success. And I think that has a big impact on like them also feeling like they're in the right seat. I think that's an element of it, for sure.
I think in our market, so we're in construction sector.
Yeah.
So huge investment in infrastructure. Compare that with Brexit, where a lot of people would come in. There's not enough skills in the sector now. So that's causing a major problem. I think companies we work with are trying to recruit en masse, effectively creating their own recruiting agencies. So one of our major clients has hired 50 TA people.
50.
Wow.
So that's bigger than a lot of recruitment businesses.
Massive.
You know, so I heard you on another podcast talking about how you had good relationships when you were internal. How would you build that with 50 TAs who are all trying to fill roles as well and get through ATS systems, etc., etc.? I think it's really difficult, which is why we try and take the approach of relationship, stand out, try and see people. But I think when there's that many TAs in the way, it's really difficult, really hard, and there isn't enough people in the UK to build what we need to build. So it's a challenge. The jobs are there, not enough people, and everyone's fighting for the same people. So yeah, it's a really difficult market at the minute.
It's also set up as well, right? Like if you plonk somebody, even if you get the market right, and you put somebody in the seat, no jobs, no brand, no reputation, no personal brand, which, you know, has been shouted about for the last few years, and massive. That is a tough old slog, a really, really tough slog. And I think you can you can lose faith that you're going to be good at this job. And I've seen all walks of life be good at this job. Effort, determination, really, really good training, really good processes, a little bit of luck probably halfway, and a little bit of coaching through those humps. But yeah, like that's a really tough stat to kind of like actually get to the bottom of. I don't know if you'll ever get to the bottom of that, because it's almost so personal as to why people are feeling that way in that moment?
I think a lot for me is the setup from the whether it's ownership or leadership or just a business in general. Even if you're more established and you've got an established market, it's how you psychologically preparing someone for what BD is really going to be. And look, BD is tough, right? And you get a lot of no's and stuff like that. But you can still psychologically prepare people for what that is.
Yep.
Honesty being one thing. The other big thing for me so when I speak to a lot of owners and like just give a bit of advice and things like that, there's a lack of clarity from them on really what they want to do. So I've spoken to about 3 people in about the last month. We've all said, right, I want to set up contract. I want to start contract. So I'm going to hire someone to come in and do contract. Do you know contract yourself? No. So you're not offering anything. You're expecting someone to come in and do this, but you don't really have a proper, like any sort of clarity on what your expectations are. It's the tail wagging the dog.
Yeah.
And then if you're going to kind of bring a more junior person into that environment and set up contract because you haven't got the money to hire a senior or whatever, but that's even worse. You don't know what good looks like. You don't know what the strategy should be. You don't know if they're properly on track or not, according to what they should be doing. Like, learn contract yourself, put a bit of effort into it, give it 6 months, build up a book, understand the operational processes, inside, outside, blah, 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 compliance and everything. Then give something to someone where you've got clarity on how to do it and build it, and give that to someone to then kind of continue. You've built something that's warm there. That's the big problem.
Or via a proper leader. That has been the
I still say learn it yourself, even before you get that leader in, just so you understand, is that leader pulling the wool over your eyes or not? And are you like, what are they doing? How are they doing it? Because even I always go back to Murray is not teaching Djokovic how to play tennis. Djokovic knows how to play tennis and can play better than Murray. Look at his cut shot.
Do you think Murray's like trying to beat him still like, in training? Do you reckon that's why he got him? It's not teaching anything from you, but I'm going to try and like beat you every single time.
Tyson Fury does not need a coach to teach him how to box. He's going to know a lot more than Ben Davison or whoever he's now got in his corner, right? You've got those guys in their corner for accountability, for picking out the things that they can't see that they're not doing themselves.
Yeah, right.
You can only do that if you've got some knowledge in it yourself.
And I think that comes back to one of the things so we talk a lot about this idea. We've talked a little bit about sales process. We've talked a little bit about sales culture. There's also like the very core of the business, which is what problem do you actually solve? Like what is I heard someone say this earlier, but the world doesn't need, or your industry doesn't need another recruiter in that niche, right? There's got to be some kind of problem centricity. There's got to be some kind of understanding. So from Roheel, you were talking about like setting people up for BD and giving them the right mindset. A lot of what I look at when we're starting really building out a playbook is the first 6 months of BD is market research, because you guys don't know what problem, like the clients I'm working with often will say, we don't really know what problem we're solving yet. So the BD call, the reason we're phoning first is because we need to take a hypothesis about what is the problem we solve to market, to get feedback on that, to then know whether to push it out.
What's amazing with what you just done there as well is you've reframed the goal as well, right? Which again, you go back to culture and you go back to mindset. If you reframe the goal, you're actually like, you're not shooting for revenue. Right. If you shoot for the end goal, right, you're not breaking down, and that becomes like almost like an impossible task for somebody to go through. And that is like demoralizing. Like you want to chunk it down, and that strategy there, just like reframing and almost, people say a lot about little wins, right? The little wins to kind of build up to that revenue goal makes things a lot easier.
You can't generate the revenue unless you're solving a problem, and you can't solve the problem unless you know what the problem is. So it makes sense that we start with, well, let's road test what the problem is. And it's crazy that we have to start there, but like very often we really do. You know, kind of talk a lot about this mantra of like the vacancy is not the problem. Roheel and I were talking offline about the fact that really the win, the goal for predictable, scalable revenue and real growth is winning clients who will bring all their vacancies to you for at least an initial period. And we've talked a lot about that with the team.
Yeah, and I think the great point around leaders learning what to do is critical. You know, we can all sit there and go, go and do this, do that. It doesn't work. Your training, we've had all the senior directors sitting in on it because, they don't know everything. They don't know what they can learn from other markets. I think that's a key thing that they understand.
Yeah.
And there's loads I learned from just some of the basic, really basic stuff at the front end around, you know, how many clients do you need to achieve your target?
Yep.
If they've got X amount of vacancies. You know, they don't think that we're in a trades and labour, you pursue them have got 500 people out,
Yeah, right.
generating $1 million, winning gross margin. They don't think like that. You know,
It's not a bad problem to have there.
it's a great problem. That sounds all right to me. But when you're relying totally on government spend, you've got to start scaling and looking at other areas you can move into. And I think it's key that the leaders know what they're doing. We don't have to know everything. You know, they're not going to be recruiters at this stage. But the juniors coming through, they need to see that they're doing the same training. If you're sat around the table, they're like, oh, well, that's good. Like, they're learning the same thing as me.
Yeah, good.
And then it becomes a better conversation because you can then sit next to them in an office. You hear what they're going, and go, oh, do you know what? I heard that in that training. That's brilliant. That you can positively feedback.
And juniors are going to come through, aren't they, now?
Yeah.
I think it was you that said the stat that we're 35% down of recruitment heads.
Yeah, I saw it earlier. So last year, apparently on LinkedIn, the industry's down 35% of people.
Now, if the market takes off, recruitment businesses will do what recruitment businesses always do and scale, sometimes a little bit too quickly, right? And that's going to need juniors coming in. And most of the time, people's memories are quite short and they won't address this problem. And then the downturn, they'll leave all their juniors kind of like stuck in the middle of a swamp. But yeah, it's the way of the world, I think, in terms of what we're doing day to day.
Yeah, absolutely. I do think there's a whole narrative though around the whole, and I don't know whether that's just the state of the market, but that the headcount play is no longer, it seems to be anathema to, like, it feels like a lot of people have got hold of the fact that, you know, you can't grow, like growing headcount isn't the right rate, but that might be because everyone's hurting at the moment and actually it's just not, not effective right now. It'll be interesting to see whether that mentality remains when conditions are right for growth again.
I think it's used as leverage for people to sell courses as well, if I'm absolutely honest with you, and get in front of business owners. It's like a real, like, you're selling pain there, aren't you, straight away? And if you're talking about headcount being a vanity metric and a solution to that and get your guys to be more profitable and you're a struggling business owner, I'm absolutely listening to that, right? So that is one tactic, but also I think people are or should learn that profit per head is much more valuable than just whacking 10 people in and going, I've got 100 person staff, but you look into it and they're losing money every month.
Coming back to one more statistic from the report. So you'll remember that we went out and did a study on 500 recruitment businesses and we pulled out 35 data points. The data's been incredible, really, really well received. We've had over 200 people download the report in the first couple of days. It's been really cool seeing the reaction and having the conversations. But one statistic that keeps coming up that people are interested in is that 43% of recruiters in that report believe that they're seen as an expert. So what does that say about the market? What does that tell us about, you know, well, where we are as an industry today?
The people are probably struggling. I think your expertise mentally will take a battering if you're not doing as well. I think if you asked that question in 2022 when everybody just opened their door and made money, I would have gone, I'm the greatest recruiter in the world, right? And I know everything about it. But you are always the nature of your environment, right? And if you're struggling, and to have that confidence to speak like an expert is really, really tricky. I think people probably need to cut themselves a little bit more slack. I think also you're probably looking at markets where people are chopping and changing a little bit just to try and make money somewhere and keep the lights on. And if you're chopping and changing, are you getting that real nucleus of information that you need to be an expert? I think that one is very much like how people are perceiving the wider market and looking maybe outward in. I don't know.
I'd say it's linked back to the last point. You know, if your main focus is revenue and work that back, that tends to be your main immediate focus. You're not going to get revenue from when you first start. It's going to be get a job on in most industries. I know you're saying it's the other way for you.
Yeah.
But for most industries, it is job dependent. So all of their behaviors start to come about picking up the job, not long-term success, not scalability, not relationships, not building blocks, blah, blah, blah. How quickly can I get that first job on to be able to get me my revenue? So cutting corners of what they should be doing. And so where do you become an expert in your market? Yes, you do research and so on and so forth, but I've always been a huge, huge believer. You learn from the people that you speak to. So, and they're the best form of intelligence. Because not only will they give you the information, if they're knowledgeable enough, they'll give you the opinion and the real world application of that in your marketplace as well. Something that you can then actually take in context to the next conversation, build on it. Whereas you just read something online, you don't really know how to necessarily apply that in the context of like your industry. But they haven't. A lot of owners and businesses don't have the patience to allow their people to do that, because it's you've got to get the first job on as quick as possible, because we need your revenue generated as quickly as possible as well. I appreciate there's the kind of flip side of that. You do need people on the phone as quick as possible, because you kind of want a bit of an acid test. Will they rise to it? Are they comfortable with it, etc., etc.? Because there are some people that just don't like that. But there's got to be a greater balance. And I'm talking from an industry perspective. It has to be a greater balance on actually upskilling these people in the right way for sustainable success, not short-term quick wins.
Yeah, and that's the pressure thing, isn't it? Top-down pressure revenue. But that, like, the perfect scenario is allowing people to blossom and understand, what they're recruiting for and their clients inside out and their candidates' pain points and what they're moving around. But the revenue pressure, especially at the moment, is huge.
I think, again, with the work that Chris and I have done and what I do with other clients, also comes back to the fact that I'm a real believer that process and process design can help shortcut some of that. It's like, actually, if you create a blueprint, if you create a methodology the consultants can really buy into and work within a dot, then you shortcut some of that route to expertise and route to revenue. You bring those two paths, they're less divergent, you kind of bring them a little bit closer back together.
I agree. I think our junior recruitment consultants in the construction industry going to have worked on site. They're not going to have that knowledge. Let's be realistic.
Yeah.
So process is critical. If we can teach them that process, they can learn as they go. And I think it leads into another point, just for silos. Everyone loves a silo, don't they? But where they can learn in my business is off our trades and labour people. A lot of them actually have worked on site, so they can give them fast track some skills there. But the process, I think, is a shortcut. I do believe that, and I'm starting to see that in action now, because they're starting to talk in a better manner about some of these skills rather than just reading off script. No personalisation in that. Starting to learn, and that's good. And starting to pick up phrases of what other people use in offices. If everyone's at home, they don't get that. So I think it's critical to go back to start that juniors are in offices with people who know what they're doing. It can move on, but at the start, I think they learn a lot. I think that's critical.
Yeah, right.
If I was starting up again, that process bit is probably the biggest thing I would do different. We took some learns on that. But again, I was speaking to someone a couple of weeks ago. Right, we're profitable, we're making good money, actually quite a good amount of money, personally. I'm going to hire people, so I'm going to bring in 5 people. All right, brilliant. And what's your go-to-market strategy? And then after a conversation, they get there. Right, and what's your process in implementing that? What's your numbers? What's your expectations? What's your metrics? What does good look like?
Yep.
And they're figuring it out for themselves there and then. Right, have you got it on paper now? So how's the individual meant to know if they're doing good or bad, etc., etc.? What are they meant to follow? Bus hits you, what are they going to do? Is it all reliant on you? And again, that's the big problem with our industry. Whereas if you look at so many other industries that have big sales teams and so on, they have that mapped out. They have that done. They have clear expectations done. So I'm a huge, huge believer that any business, and therefore the owner's job, is to provide the environment, the tools to do the job, and the clarity on how to do the job and what the expectations are. Those 3 things. If they've done that, then it's the individual's job to actually put the effort in and actually follow that through. If they're not meeting that call, it's probably a non-starter.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can judge the individual unless you've provided those 3 things first. And I'd say 90% of the issues come down to somewhere in one of those 3 things that the business hasn't provided one of those 3 things.
Well, look, the title of the report is The State of BD. I'd love to ask each of you just for a short statement what you think the state of BD is in 2025, and perhaps what you'd hope to see it kind of move towards as we progress through the year, and maybe look forward to next year's report. So, Chris, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, what I've seen BIOS trying to scale is maybe a little bit less tech, more relationship, but more defined process. I think that'll really help our recruiters, but it's getting having conversations with other recruiters, with our clients. If they're just talking to systems that say no all the time, we're going to continue to lose people from the industry.
Yeah, right.
Because it is demoralizing. If you can get them in front of people so they can learn, I think that's a huge thing. And I think it's an industry. We walk around here today, it's all very tech driven, and we can't lose sight of the relationship business. That's what we are. Tech will drive it and will help you scale quicker. But let's not lose sight of relationships. So let's get back to people talking a bit more, would be something I'd love to see.
Yeah. I think that's a strong message.
I think ultimately it's challenging, but with a really positive outlook. And I also think 9 years ago, if I looked at recruitment businesses, everybody's really ring fenced and nobody shared and nobody got together in the network and events and stuff like that. I think we're an industry where everybody is trying to learn, trying to be better, trying to give the best in class service. And that's really, really refreshing. So I think a lot more of that, a lot more sharing. And I think businesses will crack it for sure.
Absolutely. Good stuff.
I would say state of BD right now, still with short-termism type mindset, needing that immediate win, set yourself up, promote the right strategies for scalable long-term success, not just the short-term. But I am starting to see the waves of that coming through, whether talk about retained or project-based and SOWs, etc. I think more and more are now going that way, which is great to see, because I also think that adds greater value, not just financial, but actual value to the end client as well, but much more in that direction.
I appreciate it. Well, look, guys, thanks so much. I think if this conversation is anything to go by, there's a real appetite to talk about these kinds of issues and to keep it going forward. So really grateful for you to being on the panel with us today. If you want to grab a copy of the report, there's a link in the show notes, or you can grab it from my LinkedIn profile. So follow me or grab it from the show notes. And yeah, hope you enjoyed the data. Thanks.